안녕하세요. 뇌과학 리뷰 뇌리 시작하겠습니다. 오늘은 좀 특별한 시간을 가져볼 건데요. 첫 번째로 주제가 AI에 관한 연구 주제입니다. 우리가 주로 지금까지 다뤘던 좀 더 생물학 베이스의 어떤 뇌과학이 아니라 Artificial Intelligence, 요즘에 굉장히 이슈가 되고 있는 이런 주제에 관련된 네이처 논문이 나왔기 때문에 그걸 한번 볼 생각이고요. 두 번째로는 오늘 발표해 주실 분이 영어로 발표를 해 주실 것이기 때문에 또 영어로 우리가 이제 발표를 해보는 두 번째 챌린지가 있습니다. 그럼 오늘 발표를 해주실 신슈, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Okay, so hi guys, my name is Shinshu, and now I'm currently a first semester PhD student in CAST, and now I'm study with Professor Sangwon Lee, and our laboratory's name is Laboratory for Brain and Machine Intelligence, and my current research work is focused on brain-computer interface.
Yes, your research focus is brain-computer interface. Yeah. Okay, and then our department, Brain and Cognitive Sciences in KAIST. Okay, so what is the paper today then?
Okay, so the article we will read today calls Human-like Systematic Generalization Through a Meta-Learning Neural Network. It's compared with a long title, but maybe compared with biology papers, shorter.
Yeah, but I myself our research is more driven from biology. So this part is very new for me too.
Okay.
So I think it's not going to be easy to understand. And then many of our audiences would be also like that. So let's go one by one.
Okay,
Yeah.
so don't
for
worry.
the title, I don't really recognize it.
Yeah.
Can you actually go more detail for that?
Yeah, so actually there are several terminologies here we need to go through first before we go into what the paper are talking about. The first terminology is systematic generalization. So it's basically about how you learn the novel instruction and compare with or combine with the learned knowledge before. So how about we understand with a simple example?
Okay, systematic generalization.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Professor Kwon, I guess you know how to jump, right?
Jump, yeah, I know.
And
jump.
I guess you also know how to jump twice?
I can do that.
Okay, so how about now I teach you there is another action we call it DEX. It's about this.
You mean, so this behavior is now called as DEX.
DEX.
This is a new word.
Yes, so it's
that
a
you
new
made.
word for you, right?
Okay. Yes.
So now I ask you to DEX twice.
DEX twice.
What will you do?
Like a jump twice. This is DEX, so DEX twice is...
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
So-
did I do well?
Yeah, you did super well. So that how we interpret this novel instruction is actually we call the human's ability of systematic generalization. So like Professor Kwon said, he know how to jump twice. And now I tell you the new action, but we'll talk about the new action related with the previous learned knowledge, which is DEX twice. You immediately get what I mean here, right?
I
so this
see.
is what we call the systematic generalization, the terminology here.
Okay, so I used my previous knowledge.
Yeah.
What is the twice and what is the jump
Action.
and the action, and then you just told me what is the DEX.
Yeah.
So I combining these information, I could bring out new performance.
Yeah.
So this is sort of our new strategy for systematic generalization.
Yep.
And this is what human use.
Yeah, how
Okay.
human could quickly get what the novel instruction are asking you to do.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, so after this is another terminology called meta-learning. So meta-learning here is learning to learn.
Yes, learning to learn. Okay.
It sounds like a easy, phrase, learning to learn. But if we try to understand it, we might need to try harder. So learning to learn, basically a lot of algorithm these days online is like computer vision. We know how to learn stuff. It's like I tell you this is computer, you will learn this is computer. And tell you this is a mouse, and then you will learn this is a mouse. This is basically the precise of learning, right?
Just learning. There's
Yeah,
no learning.
just learning. But learning to learn is the whole process of learning. So it's like you need to acquire how to learn. That is basically what we talk learning to learn here. So now you learn it's a computer, you learn it's a mouse, and then you focus on what strategy you use to learn about this study atoms, and later when the novel atoms come, like the refrigerator or phone here, then you will use the learning strategy acquired previously to learn the novel atoms quicker.
So you mean when I learned something already, then I now learned about that object, but also at the same time, I learned how to study about those. That's sort of my strategy.
Yeah, like the features of the certain atoms, those kind of.
So for example, when I study about like second language, I learned English, for example. And then it takes so long time. It was very difficult for the first time to study about second language. But when I study about like, for example, French, then it's gonna be somewhat easier because now I know that how to study second language.
Yeah, you might focus like I might need to memorize the vocabulary first, or what kind of grammar I should focus on more better, since that will be what I use most frequently in daily life.
Okay.
So you got the learning strategy. You know how to learn now.
Okay, so when we say meta learning, meaning that again, as you said, running to run.
Yeah.
Okay, much better.
Much better?
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry, we will go through the concept again later.
Okay, so here again, the human-like systematic generalization through a meta-learning neural network. Here, the neural network means not our brain. Neural network
not our
is
brain.
sort of AI model.
Yeah.
Okay, so then it sounds like the researchers now try to make sort of a neural network algorithm, meta-learning like a algorithm that is very similar to human performance, especially for systematic generalization.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, actually, the first author, also the correspondent author, Brenden Lake, he actually visited KAIST recently. You
our
met him?
BCS symposium.
Right,
I think I say hi to him.
Yeah, so actually I met him and we went for some museum to enjoy. And then we got a picture. So I told him we're going to deal with his paper.
Oh, you discussed with this paper?
Yes.
Oh my God.
So when he presented this study, not only for this, but I couldn't really understand properly. This time, I hope that I can understand better.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go in detail then.
Okay, let's go in details. So let's first discuss more about this letter learning compositionality. It's what basically the algorithm or the model they used in this whole study. And we could also use this to learn better about the systematic generalization. So as well, meta learning, learning to learn. So we focuses on developing models or algorithm to learn and adapt to new texts with minimal training data. So like when you learn English, you try to get all the vocabulary, almost all the grammar, and repeat them again and again. But now when you try to learn French, since you almost got some learning strategies, they will follow learning strategy with less effort. You might could be able to get or acquire a new language knowledge quicker than before. But it's not necessarily true, but let's see what's gonna happen here. So in their own system, we will take this as the neural network, which is MLC they are using here.
So here the MLC means meta learning compositionality.
Yeah.
And then again, compositionality means also composition meaning we put some of the component here and there so that it can work together.
Yeah.
Okay. Using meta learning strategy.
Yeah, try to compose those.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what is this picture then?
Okay, so this picture basically shows one of the examples that might happen in daily life and also quite similar with the previous example we discussed. So here when we see that for the input of the algorithm, and like the previous neural networks or more classical neural networks, they put the input, which is the item you need to study. So here, other than the question, we also put some study examples, which is the things that you already acquired as in daily life. So study examples like jump by 2 foot and also skip by 1 foot and jump twice with jump by 2 foot for 2 times. So here is the study examples. So now as well, we also put the query instructions, which is the novel instruction you need to figure out, which is skip twice, like how to skip twice. So we will take this as one episode. So we take this as one episode as simultaneous input into our algorithm, which is MLC.
So this is the MLC, the algorithm that we are interested in.
Yeah.
And then we give this study example. What is jump? What is skip?
Yep.
Jump meaning jumping with two legs.
Yeah, like shoo.
Skip meaning jump with one leg,
Yeah, like
kind of,
this.
right?
Kind of like
okay.
that.
And then here they also give information, then jump twice. Twice meaning then 2 times.
Yeah.
And then question is skip twice.
Yeah.
So they didn't know before. So this algorithm now supposed to learn how
Yeah.
to do it
Yeah.
and then bring out some of the output. That's a task?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is basically how will they test this kind of algorithm. And meanwhile, they will compare with the behavioral target, which is evaluate human and the machine's result or response side by side. So
I see.
Yeah.
Because recently, many people are using, like, for example, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I'm so surprised. They are so smart, and then they really bring very smart answers,
Yeah.
even like looking like creative ideas. But the algorithm cannot do this kind of performance, though.
Aha. So the thing is, like, actually, they are not only this research, but the other research also try to test like transformer-like structure. So for GPT, ChatGPT actually they use transformer-like structure, how they performed in this kind of systematic generalization task. But actually, they are not that good as what we might imagine. So first of all, maybe because they didn't really specifically train them on this kind of task. Another is since they don't have that much human data related with this kind of task. So they don't really have that special mechanism to understand and perform well in this kind of test. Also, this paper they also test ChatGPT on this task or their own benchmarks. But it turns out actually they only get around, based on what I remember, around 50% correct answer.
Oh,
so
I see.
yeah, so they didn't perform that well. Means like ChatGPT actually didn't really tackle this kind of systematicity challenge.
So here the question is different, right? Here we are trying to test their meta learning,
Yeah.
like a learning ability to learn.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
this is different level.
Yeah,
Even
yeah,
for like a ChatGPT, they may not be able to really perform well.
Yeah.
And also, it seems like here the key point is that to compare human performance and machine performance, whether machine really can be like resemble or similar to human performance, right?
Yeah.
Okay, understood. Then this is a sort of question. Then how did
Yeah. How did
they do that?
Yeah. How did they really achieve this kind of system? So first thing we want to do, since we want to achieve human-like behavior, right? So we need to collect human data first.
Okay.
And what they collect here is behavioral task. So they designed their human behavioral test to collect human data. And this behavioral test is about how human could generate abstract output in a pseudo language. So all the words we are talking about in the following sections are all pseudo language. So pseudo words that never appear in the other language or didn't really have actual meaning that human might acquire before. So it's like a pure new stuff here.
Okay. So like the question that you gave me at the beginning,
like the text.
So, and then this task is for human. We first want to know how human can do this.
Yeah.
How well?
Yeah.
Okay. Then how was the task?
Yeah, so the task is like this. So first, they will randomize to choose from their own pseudo language vocabulary, from choose like 4 primitives to assign their different colored circle as the output. So like that is not this anymore. Now in their task, it's about the right circle. And the width is about green circle, lug is about blue circle, and the zup is about this yellow circle here.
Okay.
And other than this, for primitives, they also generalize for functions, feb, blanket, and also kiki.
So function, so it sounds like a verb.
Yeah.
So sort of what to do, right?
Yeah.
So dex is red circle, width is green circle, for example. These are sort of new language that did not exist before.
Yeah.
And then there's also like fab, blanket, Kiki.
Yeah.
What are those though?
Yeah,
what is
so,
that function?
So basically you see that in the God interpretation grammar, which is the ground truth here, the fab means you need to repeat the previous arguments 3 times. So if it's U1 fab, it's like 3 U1, or it's like next twice it will be 3 right circles.
Oh, okay. So fab means repeat 3 times. So then, okay. And then
Okay.
if I say Dex fab, meaning then 3 red circle
Yeah.
should be the answer.
Yeah, that is the answer based on the God interpretation grammar.
Okay. And then in that sense, Bleak Cat was
Like a simple reverse. So you still have U1 here, and then you reverse U1, U2, U1.
1, 2, 1
Yeah.
in this way. Okay.
And Kiki means you just flip. So
Flip.
X1, Kiki X2 means X2, X1.
Oh, okay. I see.
Like a quick quiz. If it's log,
Yeah.
Kiki, Zup, what will be your output?
What? Love, Kiki,
Yeah,
job.
log, Kiki, Zup.
Okay. Log was blue circle. Job was yellow circle.
Yeah.
Kiki reverse.
Yeah,
Blue, yellow, then switch this.
Yeah.
Then yellow, blue circle.
correct answer.
Okay. Okay.
You have really amazing systematic generalization ability, I
thank
guess.
you.
Yeah. So let's discuss like how they really arrange the task. So first task they call it future learning task. This task will target at how people achieve this systematic compositionality. So in this task, they have 4 stages. In each stage, they have 1 study phase and 1 test phase. So for stage 1 to stage 3, in the study phase, they will give you some instruction like here. So it's like they will give you 4 primitives, like what is the input, what is the output, and also 2 demonstrations, each for 3 individual functions. So function 1, 2, 3, which is fab, blanket, and Kiki, they will give you 2 demonstrations for each of them. So in total, they are, I guess, 6 plus 4 is like 10 examples in the study phase. Yeah. And then while in the stage 4, they add another atoms here called function compositions, which is basically compose several of the previous mentioned or studied function as extra for study examples. So for extra function compositions. This is for the study phase. And later is the test phase. So in test phase, they will show the study phase on the green while asking them about show them about 10 novel instructions. But this time there's no feedback anymore. So they won't know that whether it's correct output or not.
Oh,
So they will
I
just
see.
simply answer this 10 novel instructions.
So it basically seems like learning a new language,
Yeah.
simple language. And then this is a human task. Humans are supposed to study this phase and then also have test phase. And then the researchers will evaluate how much they make a correct or incorrect answers.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
And their main interest is on the MLC, did you say? Meta-learning compositionality model.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll talk about those 2.
Definitely. We'll talk about that later. And other than the future learning task, they also say that actually there may be some inductive biases they want to test in the human's response. So
What is inductive bias?
yeah, so in this open-ended test, they will show you just random 10 novel instructions without any study phase. So it's basically pure test phase.
So there is no study phase.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I missed it. So few shot learning task. The point is that we only give few example, few study example,
Yeah.
and then we quickly need to understand the rule, and then after catching those rules, we need to perform the task. And then open-ended task here, we even don't give those study phase. And just question.
Yeah, so just 7 novel
Okay.
questions, and now you need to guess. Since when you are guessing this, it might based on some like your previous knowledge, which is not really related with this language learning, but it might be some previous knowledge, and you might have your bias during guessing, or you have bias in your assumption. They also want to test this kind of inductive bias.
So the few shot learning task was for our purpose is to test out systematic compositionality, these
Yeah.
components.
Yeah.
But this performance can be also affected by inductive bias.
Yeah.
So they also give those tasks too.
Yeah.
Understood.
So this is basically what the two behavioral tasks are about here. And then after we fully understand, let's see how human perform in this kind of behavioral task. So for the behavioral result, let's first see the functional learning task, which is basically about systematic compositionality. So we could see actually they have some superflex here. So this asterisk is about algebraic answer, which is the best answer or the correct answer based on the golden interpretation grammar.
So right answers.
Yeah. So here we see actually for all the responses, is humans' responses, 80.7% of them got it correctly.
People did very well.
Yeah, I think it's super good work here. So it means like we have like a rather good systematic generalization ability.
Okay.
And also, even for the longer output, which is longer than the previous studied examples, people could still get 72.5% correct.
That's a sort of human's ability
Yeah.
in terms of systematic compositionality.
Yep.
Understood.
Then let's discuss what kind of error they make there. What kind of the other 20%? What are those responses are doing?
Okay.
Yeah. So there are two types of error in this kind of functional learning task. The first is one-to-one error. So basically, like example here. So Zap Kiki Dex, the correct answer should be Dex Zap, right? So it's the right circle and the yellow circle. Well, in the people who make one-to-one error, they turns to not interpret Kiki as a function, but as an atom or arguments here to interpret them. So they interpret Kiki as a blue, while what they do is Zap yellow, Kiki blue, and Dex right.
Oh,
So
this
that
is
is-
one example of error.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't remember. So meaning Dex was yellow circle and job is a red circle
Yeah,
then?
Dex is the red circle, Zap is the yellow circle, and Kiki is the flip.
Okay, confusing. Dex, job again.
Zap is the yellow circle.
Oh, okay. And then Kiki was reversing.
Yeah,
Switch.
reversing. Yeah.
So now red first and then yellow. This is the right answer.
Yep.
But there's some people actually answer like this. So and then they might confuse that
Yeah.
Kiki is just blue circle.
Yeah,
so this is a kind of one-to-one error
Yeah, yeah,
types.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And another thing is another type of error, we call it iconic concatenation, which is IC as aberration. So here we say in this Zap Kiki Dex example, they actually interpret the function wrongly. They didn't interpret the Kiki as flip, but they still interpret it as a function, while they only do that one-to-one mapping, which is simply concatenate Zap and Dex. That is what we call the SC error.
Okay, this is another types of error. And it
But,
seems like all these four are different example of those. But why do we calculate error here then?
Yeah, since that is what we call that math could reflect the people's inductive bias, like people's bias, or since people are not, how to say, like a perfect learning machine, right?
Right.
There's sometimes you can't really get it, and we're also curious why you can't really get it. So this kind of typical error type will help us to interpret or learn better about how humans are learning this kind of new instruction.
I see. Even for the human intelligence,
Yeah.
we are not perfect. So then they try to draw what kinds of error types are mostly happening.
Yeah.
And then we can maybe also compare these error types with the AI performance too.
True.
Okay.
Yeah. And after this visual learning test, they also do further analysis based on the open-ended test, which is basically about the inductive biases. So here actually we see the leftmost column is about the most frequently appeared response, which is almost like 58.6% of the responses related with those kind of response. And we found out across all responses, there are 3 different kind of errors. So the first 2 are still same as what happens in the future learning task. So in the 1-to-1, they appears in 62.1% participant, and IC error appears in 79.3% of participants, which is like a really large amount. And so we could see that it's a typical error in the human's response. And another quite a novel, we could call it, novel error here called mutual exclusivity. So we call aberration as ME. So here I took example here. So if they assume that Dex is the right circle here, when they got a new atom which is Zup, they turns to not infer it as the same as the previous learned one, but a new example is assigned to Zup here. So we call it ME error. So here in the response 3, that is all somehow related with the mutual exclusivity error.
Okay. Quite challenging to understand.
Yeah, but we could see like almost like 93.1% is like a lot of participants actually has those kind of inductive bias during learning.
I see. So there are a lot of inductive bias.
Yeah.
And
Not
then-
during learning, but during like the testing.
Okay. So up to here, we talked about the human performance in this kind of task, how human did
Yeah.
their task, and then we move on to AI.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
Now
go.
it's time to talk about our AI. So our AI or our algorithm here called meta-learning compositionality model. So we will discuss how this model happens and what is the structure of it here. So actually in this machine learning field, whether the neural network could really mimic human level systematicity has become like a huge topic or like a challenge here in the field actually.
Oh, so people have thought that AI cannot mimic human intelligence.
Yeah, so actually this challenge has been like 35 years. So
Okay.
in 1988, actually there's 2 great philosophers, and also one of them is cognitive scientist also, called Fodor and Filashkin. So actually,
Fodors?
Fodor?
Fodors?
Fodor?
Phil-
Filashkin.
okay, these
Yeah.
2 philosophers
Yeah.
argued each other,
They
This
claim
was-
this together.
claimed this together, saying,
Since actually they think the neural network could not achieve that human level systematicity.
oh, I see.
Yeah, but it's quite understandable since that time the AI hasn't been developed like these days that much, right? And also there another counter argument, they were like, oh, but maybe human didn't really behave systematically.
Right.
So
Even before AlphaGo, no one actually believed that.
yeah.
Okay.
So let's see how our current modern neural network could achieve or not. Let's see. So the network here is actually a standard transformer structure for memory-based meta-learning. Again, a really learned terminology, but let's like dissect it to one by one. Standard transformer architecture here is super obvious. We have encoder and a decoder. So basically, encoder here is how we translate our input into embedding, or maybe we say a language that a computer or algorithm could understand. And then as the input, embedding as an input to the decoder will translate this kind of embedding back to the output that corresponding with this input that we give to the encoder.
So basically, you mean this picture? These pictures are describing the structure of the algorithm
Yeah.
for this meta-learning compositionality modeling.
Yeah, it's like a simplified diagram of
I
this
see.
transformer structure.
And then encoder is like an input part, and decoder is the output part.
Yeah, how to get the output.
Okay. And then just query input, the question, as human did.
Yeah, that is about input.
And then study example, again, similar. So basically, they are giving sort of similar input that used for human task, human performance
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
just looked at.
Yeah.
So study examples are given, and some of the algorithm now calculating, computing,
Yeah.
sort of those correlation or relationship between these all the information, and then bring out somehow some output here,
Yep.
right? And then this output is now they now receive the feedback whether this was correct or
Yeah,
not.
or not, and then they will train or try to adjust the parameters within this transformer and try to learn how to learn.
I see. So this is the structure of
Yeah.
those algorithms
Yeah.
for this training.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the thing I want to stress here is the meta learning. Actually, Professor Kwan already got it since, like, you see the input structure is kind of different from the previous neural network or the transformer. So here, actually, we claim is they claim is a dynamically changing episodes. So here is one episode. Why is dynamically changing? Is like they change this episode every time during the training. And we see that they have query input, which is a question you need to solve, where this transformer need to solve. Well, not only the problem here, we also provide him several study examples, like DEX is red, ZAB is yellow, also the other information about the function itself. We combine this query input and also some input-output pairs as the input for the encoder. So they claim this kind of things actually amount to the meta learning.
I see. So they need to also run sort of running strategy here, not just a simple like given knowledge.
Yeah, it's not simple about like this query input is mapping to this query output, but how to learn with the study examples, how to learn this from the study examples.
I got it.
Yeah. So for the training data set, what they use is sets with human answers. This is what we collect before. And the data set they give them is basically at approximately the same ratios of errors or correct answer or different kind of errors as observed before for the human data set. And the test sample here will be how they do the test is after training, they will freeze the weight here in the transformer. So then they test them with the normal instructions without any feedbacks. So that is also the same as the human behavioral test, right?
So in case of the human behavior task, there was like stage 1 to 3, and then in stage 1, there's few shot learning.
Yeah.
So there's no many number of training for human. Is that also same for MLC modeling too?
Yeah. So that time, I think we should try to separate those concepts: the training for human beings and the training for networks here.
It's not same.
It's not exactly the same here. So for the human, it's like we acquired the knowledge before, but for the neural network, it's like vanilla. I know nothing at all.
I see.
Yeah, so that time the training is about to try to acquire some same level as what humans experienced before, maybe in your daily life or in your previous maybe 20 or 30 years.
Yes.
Yeah, so that training is different from this kind of training.
I see.
Yeah. So in humans, the training we should call it better like study. So now they study the new language. So here in the this transformers perspective, this whole episode is called like a study phase.
Okay. Okay, understood.
Yeah. Study phase, but also during test, those episodes will be the test phase, similar to the human beings behavioral task.
Okay, this is also basic structure of those models. And then using this model, what did they do then? Now
they need to train and test this model.
then
So
we need to look at those results now.
yeah, now we need to look to like how the result of MLC is similar or maybe not to the human's response.
Understood.
So MLC stability. So in the functional learning test, which is targeting the systematic compositionality, we can see in all the figures here, the percentage that appears in the appears in the parentheses is what has been achieved by MLC, while the upper part is the human. So for here also.
Okay, so these numbers are the performance of a human, 88% correct answers.
Yeah.
And here, this is from MLC.
Yeah. So also for here, it's all the same.
Seems like most of the numbers are quite similar
Yeah.
between human performance and MLC performance.
Yeah. So not only for the systematic output, which is the best answer, they got a similar level. Also for the errors, for the two types of error, one-to-one to iconic concatenations, they also achieve like quite similar levels compared with the human beings. And also they also figure out or they found out actually the MLC could predict which instructions are easier or harder for people on average. So which means that they kind of achieve a really good ability for the systematic generalization.
I see. In terms of correct answer, the performance between human and MLC was quite similar.
Yes,
meaning that. So here, the purpose of this model is not only to make a right answer.
Yeah.
Whether it's really make a sort of similar performance with human.
Yeah.
And then as shown here, actually it was quite similar. Even for the error, when we make an error, there's different types of error type. And then even for those types, the MLC was actually generating quite similar errors.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah, that is the point. So it's not a thing that here we are only get the best answer, right? So since during the training and the testing, so in the training we can actually use the human data. So actually in this way, the MLC could kind of learn how human responds.
Understood. Okay, it's interesting.
Yeah. So let's see another test. We have the second test, open-ended test here, which is about inductive bias. So with the same formula, human MLC, we could say that actually 65% of the samples are exactly the same as what human responds in MLC.
65% of samples are same as human.
Yeah.
So this performance between human and machine was similar.
Yes, quite similar.
It's quite similar.
It has achieved 65% level.
Okay.
And for the error here, since this whole test is about inductive biases, so we want to see whether they could make similar levels of errors also. So for the 1-to-1, IC and ME, we could see that actually they achieved quite similar level of errors, of different type of errors also.
I mean, to be honest, I didn't fully understand this concept of open-ended task, but still, I can understand the conclusion. So using testing for this kind of biased performance, it was also quite similar between human and machine.
Yeah.
So reversely, then we can think that this machine learning algorithm is quite possibly mimicking human intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah. And other than this, now I'm going to show you more precise calculation of the similarity between the response of MLC and the response of human.
Okay, let's see that.
So here's about the modeling result. Spoiler alert, actually MLC is capable of optimizing models for highly systematic behavior. So basically here what I show is they actually they try to compare the result from different models.
Oh, so there has been many other models, before or not just for MLC, but there are some other types of modeling, and they now comparing their performance.
Yeah. So even in MLC, there are actually a lot of variants, right? It's not only MLC, you could say MLC copy only, algebraic only, and the joint only. So basically what I show here is like how they use different study examples and query examples, and then they make the variants of MLC.
Different types of MLC.
Yes. And the thing is, we could see that actually these two models shows a similar result or similar behavioral accuracy for the future learning task, which is symbolic oracle biases and MLC. Yeah, and why they are similar because it is due to the training examples and its own network architectures. So we can see that actually MLC was similarly optimized to implicitly infer systematic rules and respond with the same bias-based patterns. Since like in the symbolic model, which they don't only teach them the rules, like how to match different primitives and also different functions. In the possibility of generating the errors, they also try to use some bias inductive patterns. So for the inductive bias pattern we discussed before, they also try to implement those bias into the the error that happened in the symbolic model.
So because you are comparing between MLC versus like symbolic, can we briefly get an idea what is the symbolic model?
Okay. So the symbolic model basically is about like I directly or explicitly tell you what is the rule of learning.
So this is not learning to learn. Symbolic means just learning.
Yeah, it's not meta learning anymore.
Oh, okay.
It's like
this is computer, this is mouse,
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
And they just teach them.
yeah.
And then that was still brought like quite similar level compared to MLC. In the few shot learning. So here the lower number, like a minus 20, minus 500, minus like 10, minus 1,000, these are the worst performance. If the number is close to 0, it means the better performance
Yep.
or more similar to human
Yeah,
performance.
since it's log likelihood.
So if they are ideally exactly same, this would be like 0.
Yeah, it should be 0.
So meaning that symbolic and MLC was quite similar performance, at least for the few shot learning. You just mentioned the inductive biases,
Yeah.
and then there, but MLC was showing much better performance.
Yeah. And for MLC, actually, they show better performance than symbolic in the open-ended task. But also, the variant of MLC actually shows the best, or we say the strongest performance here.
MLC joint?
Yeah, MLC joint. Since this MLC model, we could see that the study examples and the current example is based on both of the tasks. So the study examples is set, we could see set 1, either all 14 or a random subset between the 0 to 14 examples. While the current examples here is set 2, they also passed through the bias-based transform, which has been learned in the symbolic and MLC also. So this is MLC joint actually achieved the best performance among all the models.
MLC joint was the best.
Yeah.
That's I get it.
Yeah, that is what we learned here. Since actually they train on both of the data from both of the tests, so I guess that is super intuitive that you get the best performance in both tests.
Got it. Let's go ahead.
Yeah,
So
let's
what do
go
we have
ahead.
more?
So the next about, they don't really, just constrain themselves in their own task. They also try to test in the other machine learning benchmarks.
Oh, so we looked at a task they developed, but in the field, maybe these researchers might need to prove themselves to the other people. So maybe perform the other types of tasks.
Yeah. So actually, this kind of benchmarks is about like the previously mentioned, like the challenge about why their neural network could really tackle the problem of systematicity. So they want to use this benchmark to test their algorithms also. So one of the benchmark calls SCAN, another one COGS. So SCAN basically is quite similar with the previous mentioned examples, the jump twice, DAX twice. And the COGS is basically about the semantic interpretation. It's basically about like how words and the nouns has been, work together, how they work together in one sentence.
Okay, so these two are different types of task examples.
And then they also have different, they have their own data set based on the task.
Okay, and then now MLC performed this task and might have some of results.
Yeah, we see that actually MLC achieved like error rates of less than 1% on machine learning bench of systematic generalization here. So all errors around this kind of systematic lexical generalization has achieved less than 1% error rates.
So meaning that, so at least comparing to this basic sequence-to-sequence model, MLC's performance was dramatically improved in these types of tasks too.
True.
Oh, I see.
But however, they also admit that actually there are flaws in this MLC these days. So it's like actually MLC fails to handle longer output sequence as well as novel and more complex sentence structures.
So if the task is getting more difficult, like making it longer output sequence, then their performance is not that high yet. So there still has some limitation.
This have a limitation. However, they claim that this kind of task actually require handling productivity. It's kind of a concept also mentioned in the Folder and Felician's paper, but however, it's quite a far away from systematicity. That's what they claim here. And also, for this kind of task, this kind of example in their own task, actually, the MLC performs quite well. So they think that meta-learning compositionality model have a really promising future. Yeah, so they leave as a challenge for their future work.
I see. So, I mean, during this task, although our focus is about like systematic compositionality, this task actually includes some other ability or other aspects too.
Yeah.
So the authors are arguing that these low performance is actually driven by the other types of issues. Okay.
But
And
they still think that they definitely need to, further modify their algorithm to get better performance in those kind of tasks.
I see. Then we can expect soon, like some of algorithm really shows that meta learning.
It's true.
I see.
It's true.
Okay.
Yeah. So now actually about with all the contents, like summarize a little bit.
Okay.
So now came to our conclusion. So we could see from the human behavior result, the people actually are not pure algebraic machines, right? We didn't really get that kind of semantic answers 100%. So most common human response was as algebraic and systematics in exactly the way that Fodor and Felicien discuss. So they discuss that people are making decisions in this way. However, people also rely on inductive biases, which has been discussed in our previous findings, which is as 3 types of errors that sometimes support the algebraic solution, but sometimes also deviate from the correct solutions. And another think that MLC actually could mimic and also exist human. So they think that MLC could achieve this human-like systematic generalization and also inductive biases. So closely reproduced human behavior concerning both systematicity and also the biases, with the MLC that the joint model could best navigating the trade-off between those 2 blueprints of the human linguistic behavior.
Okay. So this is their sort of argument or conclusion.
Yeah, they think like, what they found in the human beings and also how our model is similar with the human beings.
I got it. So this is surprising that, I mean, nowadays, we are always surprised with this rapid development of AI techniques.
Yeah, that's true.
And it could be one of them. Now they can mimic our human intelligence in terms of systematic compositionality.
Yeah, true.
But still, so, I mean, their core idea is that what they made, this new algorithm is quite similar with human performance. But this is about the performance. What's happening in the brain or in the actual algorithm? We don't really know that.
Yeah.
So can we really say that they are same?
Yeah, so actually they also admit that they have limitations on that
I
part
see.
too. So like maybe we say the second limitation first. They say that actually this model could only achieve the adult compositional skills, but they didn't really reflect the precise, like which adults acquired those skills. So they didn't really show how the adults really acquire the skills by the model itself. That is, they think, is one of their limitations when they're talking about the results.
Okay. And seems like there's other limitations
Yeah,
too.
since there will be a really long way to go. So there are other things that they claim that actually they didn't solve all the challenges that mentioned by Fodor and Felicien. So the first one is they failed to handle the unpracticed forms of generalization on concepts outside the meta-learning distribution. So what they, one of the example will be that longer sentence. So if in the study example, we learn a lot of short sentence or short examples, but later if we double the length of the sentence, it might feel hard to learn about it or try to get the correct answer about it. So this is the first challenges that didn't solve. Another one is generalizing to nuances in inductive biases that it was not optimized for. So actually in the supplementary information, they mentioned that actually they failed to do that since some of the nuances in the inductive bias for human beings is hard to be learned by the meta-learning compositionality model currently. So this kind of nuances sometimes is context-based. So in the open-ended task, they think that actually I provide you several options and then you need to like maybe different colored circles and then you need to guess what each atom is about, right? Like what kind of circle you should put. But they claim that, so context-based, one of the example is if I give you more option or there's more option left, maybe you will have different kind of inductive bias. So the third limitation here is they think that they are lacking of a mechanism for emitting new symbols. But however, they also say that they could be solved by some more complicated structure of the algorithm. And the last one is they failed on testing on the full, it's not they failed, it's like they didn't really test on the full complexity of natural language and on other modalities like computer visions. So what they could achieve here is only mainly targeting to the systematicity, right? However, they didn't really test their model on the other, like just daily conversation or computer vision.
Human language is much more complicated.
Definitely.
So there was a sort of simple wording, like with one verb, something like that. So so that is still one of the limitations.
Yeah, so they admit that they didn't really solve all the challenges. And another thing that is quite like a promising future. So they think that actually this kind of MLC or meta learning could shine in the future regarding to the natural developmental question, to solving this kind of developmental questions. So actually systematicity can be improved through incentive and the practice. They found out actually for the people who are infant and also preschool student, those people's systematicity or their ability for systematic generalization has been improved a lot. So that might be related with some incentive and the practice. That is quite similar to the meta-learning compositionality model here, right? And they think that children may use experience like what happens in MLC to hone their skills for learning new words and systematically combining them with the familiar words. So maybe they are promising future for meta-learning to really model not only the result or the skills, but also the learning process that what happened really in the human's brain.
For the humans, it takes like 10, 20 years. We cannot say that, but anyway, it takes a lot of time, but maybe at the end, AI might be much, much faster in that sense, right? Okay. That's it?
Yeah, that's all the contents of this.
Thank you so much. Again, for our audiences, this is very challenging. So the topic, research topic, and then the article itself was quite, for many people, it might not be very familiar. It was also for me. And then at the same time, you also did it in English too this time, so it might be a little bit challenging. But in spite of it, I actually read the paper a little bit, couldn't really get it. But based on your explanation, I could understand much, much better. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here also. I feel super glad to have this kind of chance.
네, 이번 논문이 쉽지는 않으셨을 것 같습니다. 저도 다 이해하진 못한 것 같지만 그래도 새로운 분야에 대해서 많이 공부해 볼 수 있는 시간이 됐던 것 같습니다. 저희가 자막을 만들어서 제공하기 때문에 또 좀 더 이해를 하실 수 있기를 바라는 마음으로 여기서 마무리를 하면 될 것 같습니다. 네, 그러면은 오늘은 뇌리 여기서 마무리하도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.